Once upon a time, there was a time when there was no such thing as mental illness. And it was the 1930s when Dr. Weston Price, a dentist and epidemiologist, travelled the world to discover the cause of dental decay. And over a period of 8 years, he travelled to 5 different continents, and he lived with 14 different tribes from 14 different countries. From the Eskimos of Alaska to the natives of Canada and the Aborigines of Australia. And he documented and photographed thousands of these traditional people, as well as their descendants. And he compiled his evidence in this 528-page masterpiece called Nutrition and Physical Degeneration, in which he documented not only their dental health, but their physical and mental health too. So what did he find? Well, his first key finding was that different groups of people ate different foods. There was no one diet for everybody. So the Eskimos of Alaska, for instance, they ate an all-animal diet. It was made up of 80% fat and 20% protein. Lots of fatty red meat and fish, seal and whale blubber, but absolutely no vegetables and no grains whatsoever. And this was in stark contrast to the Polynesians. They had a coconut-based diet, so they ate lots of fermented coconut milk, yogurt and cheese, some boar meat, some fish, but absolutely no grains whatsoever. And again, this was in contrast to the Indians of the high Andes. They had a grain-based diet with lots of quinoa. They had some fruit, some fish, and milk, cheese and yogurt from llamas, and some llama meat. Its second finding was that people ate foods that were available to them both locally and naturally, and they were all whole foods. There were no refined foods whatsoever. There was no white rice, no white flour, no white bread, no white spaghetti, no canned foods, no synthetic products, no herbicides, and no pesticides. And Dr. Weston Price found that on these diets, people enjoyed exceptional dental, physical, and mental health. Compared to the figures of today, where it's estimated that 81% of the Western world suffer from some form of chronic disease, here there was none. There was no heart disease, no hypertension, no arthritis, no allergies, no cancer. And most interesting to me, they didn't even have a word for depression. They had no understanding of what melancholy was. Instead, they thrived, both physically and mentally. However, their descendants, as soon as they moved into the towns where the Western diet was readily available, along came chronic disease. So after the arrival of the Western diet, he saw not only dental decay, but cancers, heart disease, diabetes, and mental illness. Now, Dr. Weston Price's work came in for lots of praise and plaudits, including this one. But he didn't understand the scientific reason for why, when people followed their traditional diet, they endured such good mental and physical health, and there was no chronic disease. And for that insight, we need to turn our attention to 2 other doctors who, whilst working in completely different areas, came to the same conclusion. So during his lifetime, Dr. Francis Pottinger was the world's leading authority on something called the autonomic nervous system. Now, this is a series of nerves, muscles, and organs over which you have no conscious control. And it's involved in all physical movement, all of your respiration, your cardiovascular function, all of your thoughts, your immune function, and all of your metabolism and your digestion. And given the extent of its control over the body's processes, it's probably not surprising for you to learn that it has a critical role in both our physical and our mental health. Now, there are 2 branches to the autonomic nervous system. Firstly, the sympathetic branch. Now, this is responsible for our short-term survival, and it gives us our get up and go and mobilizes our cardiovascular system, our respiratory system, as well as our muscles. In fact, if this sympathetic branch didn't get mobilized, I wouldn't be able to do this presentation. The second branch is called the parasympathetic branch. It's concerned, in contrast with the sympathetic branch, with our long-term survival. And it needs to get activated for us to sleep, to fight coronavirus, and for us to digest food and extract fuel from food. Now, what Pottinger discovered over a period of 40 years, doing thousands of studies on his patients, was that people belonged naturally to one of three groups according to their genetically predetermined balance in this autonomic nervous system. His group 1 patients had an overly strong sympathetic system but a weak parasympathetic system. And all of the organs and tissues and muscles associated with the strong sympathetic system were overdeveloped, like the heart, lungs, muscles, and the left hemisphere of the brain. However, all of the tissues and organs and muscles associated with the weak parasympathetic system were underdeveloped. Things like the digestive system, immune system, and the right hemisphere of the brain. Now, this affected not only their psychological and their physiological profile, but also their health profile too. So he found that group 1 people with their strong sympathetic system made for excellent athletes, academics, business leaders. These are the kind of people that could go on 4 or 5 hours sleep and still perform to an exceptionally high level. People like Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan. However, due to their weak parasympathetic nerves, they were susceptible to certain illnesses, including poor digestion, irritable bowel, hypothyroidism, and tumour-based cancers. Now, in contrast, the polar opposite to the group 1s were the group 3s. And they had an overly strong parasympathetic branch and a weak sympathetic branch. And because of their strong parasympathetic system, all of the muscles, tissues, and organs associated with that branch were highly developed, such as the right hemisphere of the brain, the digestive system, and the immune system. However, due to their weak sympathetic system, they had underdeveloped cardiovascular, respiratory systems and their muscles. And again, group 3 people had particular traits. Due to their strong parasympathetic system, they were good creatives. They were patient with people, slow to anger, and very good with people, very creative. But they were susceptible to a completely different set of illnesses: heart failure, blood-borne cancers, allergies and asthma, and also depression. Now, group 2 patients came in the middle. They had relative balance between the two branches of this autonomic system. And in the main, they enjoyed better health. Now, the next piece in our puzzle comes in the form of Dr. Daniel Funkenstein. And over a period of 30 years, he investigated the role of the autonomic nervous system in mental health. And like Pottinger, he discovered that people could be divided into one of 3 autonomic groups. The only thing that was different was the language. So the group 1 patients of Pottinger, Funkenstein called sympathetic hyper-responders. The group 2s were balanced reactors. And Pottinger's group 3s he called sympathetic hypo-responders. And in doing thousands of experiments, both with his Harvard Medical School students and his psychiatric patients, he found that people typically fell into a pattern. So he would find, when he did tests on his Harvard medical students, that they would fit into group 2. And remember, they're the people with the balanced autonomic nervous system. However, his psychiatric patients, whether they were suffering from schizophrenia, psychosis, anxiety, depression, they fell into either group 1 or group 3. And his breakthrough moment came when he discovered that when his psychiatric patients recovered from their illness and he retested them, they moved. They moved from either group 1 or group 3 into group 2. And what Funkenstein therefore discovered was that mental illness lies in an imbalanced autonomic nervous system. And the key to achieving mental health is to bring back balance into this autonomic system. Now, this led one of the world's leading oncologists, Dr. Nicholas Gonzalez, to say that if Dr. Funkenstein's work had been taken more seriously, it would have changed the course of psychiatry forever. So why wasn't it? Well, at the same time in history, the first psychiatric medications were being discovered, and hydrazine was discovered in leftover German World War II bombs. And psychiatry went off in a completely different direction. First chasing hypotheses about dopamine and schizophrenia, and then serotonin and depression. So there's quite a lot there to take in, so I'm just going to quickly summarize it before I continue. So Price discovered that different people thrive on different diets. Pottinger discovered that people naturally fall into one of three autonomic groups. And Funkenstein discovered that when people are mentally ill, they belong to either groups 1 or 3, but when they recover, they move into group 2. Okay, I'm now going to bring all of this knowledge together, and to do that, I'm going to tell you my personal story. So I'm 47, and ever since I was 3, my dad has suffered from very, very severe depression.
Out of 10.
-10.
-10.
Yeah.
So severe, in fact, that over the course of the last 4 decades, he's had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of courses of electric convulsive therapy. That's ECT, where they send an electric shock to your brain. He's also been hospitalized 7 times. And in February of last year, doctors discovered 2 blood clots on his lungs, which meant that he couldn't have his electric shock therapy, which he had every 2 weeks under general anaesthetic. And because of this, his mental health deteriorated very, very rapidly. And once again, he was admitted
Come on, then,
to
sit down.
psychiatric
Come on, go.
hospital.
Come on, sit up. Come on. Come on. Come on. Push up. Come on. Come on. Come on. Otherwise I'll have to call the nurse. You don't want that, do you? Come on. Get up. Come on. Push. 1, 2, 3. Come on. Push. Push with your feet. Yes, you can.
Now, my dad's never left psychiatric hospital without electric shock therapy, but we were faced with a new paradigm where he just simply couldn't be treated. So I went on a journey of discovery to see whether I could resolve my dad's distress myself. And through my neuroscience training, I already knew the work of Price, Pottinger, and Funkenstein, but what I didn't know was how to balance the autonomic nervous system to resolve someone of their distress. But on my journey, I discovered the work of Dr. Nicholas Gonzalez. Now, he was treating cancer patients in the US with extraordinary outcomes through a 3-tiered protocol involving high numbers of pancreatic enzymes, body detoxification, and using nutrition to balance the autonomic nervous system. Now, I read all of his textbooks, watched all of his videos, and read all of his clinical papers. And I identified Dad through his psychological, physiological, and health profile as a Group 3 patient. Now, remember that these are the people that Pottinger and Funkenstein described as having very, very strong parasympathetic nerves, but weak sympathetic nerves. So I knew that to bring about balance in Dad's autonomic nervous system, I needed to boost his sympathetic nerves and move him from a Group 3 patient into a Group 2. Now, whilst he was in hospital, I didn't have control over his diet because he used the hospital canteen. But what I could do was use the natural supplements that Gonzalez used with his cancer patients to bring them back into autonomic balance. So I created my own protocol, not to treat cancer, but depression, and literally smuggled these into the psychiatric hospital. And 2 weeks later...
So how are you feeling, would you say? How would you describe it?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah? It's a bit different to a month ago. You were on your knees a month ago. Can you remember? You probably can't remember.
Don't think about it.
Don't think about it.
I've got to concentrate on moving forward.
Now, Dad, as I say, had never ever left psychiatric hospital without electric shock therapy. And he now hasn't had any treatment in over a year. And here he is, a couple of months back, dancing with my mum, and they've been married for 55 years. And I charted my journey in a book called Saving Dad, and I've made this available to everyone for free today. There's copies outside, so please do help yourself on the way out, and you can read my story. But that's only one patient, isn't it? Yes, a very severe case, but it's still only one patient. We need more evidence. So I'm sure some of you have heard of Dr. Jordan Peterson. He's a world-renowned psychologist and author of 12 Rules for Life. And here he is talking to Joe Rogan.
This is a fascinating thing with you personally. Your diet. You're on this carnivore diet now.
Yes, I've had depression since I was 13 probably, and very severe.
When you say depression, define it.
Imagine that you wake up and that you remember that all your family was killed in a horrible accident yesterday.
You would feel that even
All
if
the
nothing
time.
was wrong?
Yes. I've been on a pure carnivore diet for about 2 months. I started waking up in the mornings. I'd never been able to wake up in the mornings my whole life. I always had to stumble to the shower, and then maybe I could wake up. It took me an hour, and I felt terrible. And so all of a sudden I woke up, and it was like, oh, look at that. I'm awake in the morning, and I'm clear-headed, and things aren't gloomy and horrible. It's like, well, isn't that weird? Within a week, I was 25% less anxious in the morning. Within 2 weeks, 75%, and I've been better every single day. I'm better now probably than I've ever been in my life, and I haven't been taking antidepressants for a whole year. I need way less sleep. I get up in the morning and I'm fine. I'm not anxious. I'm not depressed. I don't have psoriasis. I'm certainly intellectually at my best at the moment, which is a great relief, especially doing this tour. Depression is gone. Okay, this is all a mystery to me.
Well, it may be a mystery to Dr. Jordan Peterson, but it's not a mystery to me, and it may be beginning to make some sense to you. So Dr. Jordan Peterson is a group 3 parasympathetic dominant patient. And on his carnivore diet, red meat is like the elixir of life to group 3 parasympathetic dominance. It contains lots of things which, now this is quite sciencey, this slide, but basically it all points to the same thing in that red meat contains lots of things that stimulate the sympathetic nerves to bring about balance in a parasympathetic dominant. It contains lots of phosphates and sulfates, and these in the body convert into free fatty acids. And in an acid environment, the sympathetic nerves fire. So for a parasympathetic dominant, it brings them back into autonomic balance. Red meat's also loaded with phenylalanine and tyrosine, which are the precursors to the 2 main sympathetic neurotransmitters, once again firing the sympathetic nerves and bringing about autonomic balance in someone that's a parasympathetic dominant. And finally, it's loaded with aspartic and glutamic acid, and glutamate is an excitatory neurotransmitter. So again, it fires the sympathetic nerves, bringing about balance in a group 3 parasympathetic dominant. So Jordan Peterson's resolution of his depression as a group 3 parasympathetic dominant was done by eating red meat, moving him from a group 3 to a group 2 by boosting his sympathetic nerves and achieving autonomic balance. And this is now the diet that my dad follows. So he has a very high red meat diet, plus fatty fish, root vegetables, not green vegetables. That's an important distinction, and I can talk about that if anyone's interested. And his natural supplements. And that picture was taken a couple of weeks ago. But that's only 2 patients. We need more evidence. So on hearing about Dr. Jordan Peterson's story, I got in touch with his daughter on Twitter. And Michaela's also been interviewed by Joe Rogan, and she goes into great lengths about how she's resolved not only her severe depression, but also her arthritis. Remember, arthritis is another chronic disease. She had a hip replacement and an ankle replacement by the age of 17. So she also resolved her depression through eating a carnivore diet. So I got in touch with her, and she said she'd gone a step further. She'd set up a Facebook group for people that were interested in trying to resolve their chronic disease through a carnivore diet. She calls it the Lion Diet. So for me, this is a great source of data and evidence. So I ran a poll on our Facebook group. and asked people, has the Lion diet improved your depression? 44 people said yes. Nobody said no. And 5 people said it's too early to say. And here's what people said. Aaron said, I've had clinical depression and anxiety most of my life. This diet has literally saved me from suicide. Depression is completely gone. Kathleen said, going carnivore helped to save me from suicide in October last year. April said, after day 5 of being on the carnivore diet, my depression disappeared almost 100%, and the same with my anxiety. And Jin Young said, total transformation for me. No more inexplicable sense of doom. It's amazing. I think I'm living the way folks without depression have experienced life. And I have many, many more examples of people saying very, very similar things. So I think there is great hope for everybody, for you, for your colleagues, for your friends and family, to use nutrition. This is just one part of it, but to use nutrition to achieve mental health and to recover from mental illness by tailoring your diet to your autonomic grouping. But a word of warning, this information isn't widely available.
The significance here is that doctors don't learn about nutrition. They don't learn about lifestyle. They don't learn about how to use these things with their patients.
You're not taught, in medical school, you don't do nutrition?
No, patients are coming to see us and are thinking that we know this information, but a lot of us are not taught this information.
When you were in medical school, how many hours of training would a physician get in nutrition?
The answer is not enough. I'd probably say 2 to 3 hours of lectures.
And I now work with lots of companies and individuals on helping them with their mental health and resolving mental illness by using nutrition. And this is one of the people that I work with. So perhaps we can help each other. Perhaps I can help you. If you need help with mental health in the workplace, then please contact me. But I think you can help me too. Please connect with me. Please share this information. I think this is going to be made available, the slides, to get this information out there, because there is great hope in being able to help people achieve exceptional mental health. So let's change the mental health landscape together. Thank you.